What's up, everybody? Brady VR coming at you with a album review for the new Body Count record Merciless that was released this past Friday, November 22nd. Ice-T's metal band back with their first album in about 4.5 years now, following up 2020's Carnivore. You know, I've never really had a full album release from Body Count that I found myself really latching on to. There's a few songs here and there, especially from their more recent albums, that I find myself enjoying. And I will say that I really do enjoy the overall style of Body Count, how they kind of have that three-way intersection between rap, thrash metal, and like modern hardcore. In a way, it's kind of like Hatebreed meets Rage Against the Machine. It's especially interesting for me considering I strongly dislike rap music as a whole, straight up rap music, and I'm not a fan of most types of rap metal or the more rappy new metal like Limp Bizkit, stuff like that. But Body Count is far from that, especially on the instrumental level, because when you take out Ice-T's vocals, which oftentimes do lean rap, it's pretty much full-on thrash-influenced hardcore. Sometimes they amp up the thrash and the metal influence quite a bit. Sometimes some of these tracks are more just straight-up hardcore. And even Ice-T's vocals in particular, he delivers them with a certain hostility that really does fit with the music and doesn't make it sound like it's conflicting. I do find some of the lyrics, especially on the last two albums, to be a little bit cringy, at least when he kind of goes for that more of that like tough guy, like more beat down inspired lyrical theme. And I actually strongly prefer when his lyrics are more politically charged, or when they're more just about an actual theme rather than just them trying to be aggressive and in your face, which oftentimes does make them a little bit cringy. But just based on the album art and some of the singles, some of the features that are on this album, even some of the titles, like, this very clearly, to me, is Ice-T at his most metaled up, and Body Count at their most metaled up, in every way possible, in the instruments, in the lyrics, in the vocal delivery. And I gotta admit, I mean, my hopes weren't super high just because, again, there hasn't really been a full album by this band that I've found myself really enjoying, but I gotta give it to Ice-T and I gotta give it to Body Count. I'm really fucking with this album. Like, the opening 1-2 punch of the title track and the Purge, that opening sequence is just absolutely crushing. After you get past the opening intro track, which I'm not really sure how necessary that was, but once you get past that, like, these two tracks in a row are just, they crush. Like, you hit play on Merciless and it opens with like that really simple, isolated, like, Lars Ulrich Black Album drum groove. But then you get those droning guitars and those aggressive vocals, and it immediately starts to build tension. You get that chorus with those like backing, those echoey background sort of gang vocals, and Ice-T's, again, more aggressive vocals kind of weaving in and out. The song overall maintains a good energy, and then it arrives at the grooviest, maybe one of the best thrash riffs I've heard all year. Skip to exactly the 1 minute 52-second mark if you want to hear it. Just, that is fucking sick. That's maybe one of the best riffs I've heard all year. And when the drums kick in and they accent the perfect times on the riff to make it really punch that much harder. They also kind of switch up and take on multiple feels that make the song even more dynamic. After that, you get one of the best solos on the album. That it manages to actually have a lot of soul in it, despite the aggressive nature of the song. And it somehow managed to also sound very cohesive, despite those kind of slightly conflicting moods. I do have one like really small, picky criticism about this song, but it's more of a criticism of the whole album because it appears on multiple spots on here, so I'll address that at the end of the video. But just, wow, this song blew me away the first time I heard it. And then it goes into the track 3 on here, The Purge, which features Corpse Grinder, or George Fisher, most notably from Cannibal Corpse. This track, The Purge, was written about the horror franchise, the Purge movies, which, if you're not familiar, just look it up. I'm not going to explain the whole plot in this video. I just don't have enough time. But it sees Ice-T kind of like put himself in the films and kind of say what he would do in that scenario. I think that's so cool, and the way he executes that, and the lyrics he writes, and he literally tells you what he does. He says he's going to kill all the racists. So super inspired lyrics on this song, and I really appreciate that. And the song itself is just an absolute monster. Corpse Grinder's layered, almost gang vocal type vocals, and how he just yells Purge to accent the instruments. It works so well. I love that bottom heavy, groovy thrash riff in those verses. And then you get to Corpse Grinder's actual part, which is preceded by like this hype up pre-breakdown type thing where Ice-T is saying the Purge is about to begin, and then Corpse Grinder's part kicks in, and it is one of the just catchiest, it's some of the catchiest vocal cadences on the whole album. It makes one of the most memorable parts on the whole album. I far and away think that he is the best feature on this entire album. The next track, Psychopath, I think is all right. It doesn't have as much identity as the first two songs just because of the main riff is just blatantly worshiping Slayer. But I mean, I still think it's a solid track. And when it's following up two songs like Merciless and The Purge, like, it's very hard to maintain that same quality for 3 tracks in a row. So it might feel a little underwhelming to me in the full album context, but I still found myself enjoying it for the most part. The track also features Joe Badalano of Fit for an Autopsy. I just actually reviewed their album a few weeks ago, so if you're a fan of them, definitely check that review out. Quick off-topic side note, if you hear the airplanes going on, just try your best to disregard it. I live right by an airport, and there's just airplanes every frickin' 20 seconds. But Joe has a pretty cool feature on this song as well, whether it's his high screams when he actually says the word psychopath, or his traditional, more Fit for an Autopsy-esque lower screams that we hear towards the end of the song. And these 3 tracks in a row actually illustrate my point that I was making earlier about this very much being a metaled up album, especially as far as the lyrical themes go. This song, Psychopath in particular, is very, very thrash lyrical. Like, you know what I'm trying to say. The riffing was very Slayer-esque. These lyrics pretty much are too. The next track, Fuck What You Heard, is a track that I very much expected to dislike and cringe at, but it actually is a pretty great song, and one I also find myself really enjoying. I like the tension that this song has with that more dissonant, almost eerie verse melody in the guitar, and lyrically it's more of a cry for unity, which I appreciate. Ice-T compares far leftists and far rightists, as far as political sides go here in the U.S., to gangs, and referring to the two-party system as like a gang war, and he goes so far as to call them Democrats and blood publicans. It made me crack up on my first listen, but again, I like when he leans political, and this is another song that has some very inspired lyrics. The track Live Forever features Howard Jones from Killswitch Engage, one of my favorite bands and one of my favorite vocalists as a result. But somewhat surprisingly, I'm not crazy about that clean chorus where Howard's singing forever, I want to live forever, and I don't know, it kind of derails the energy and that crackling just viciousness that this album has maintained so far. But it definitely picks back up when Howard has his scream section that leads into one of the most crushing breakdowns on the whole album. Then you have the track Do or Die. This is one of the ones I wasn't crazy about. I don't dislike it, but lyrically I'm not crazy about it. It's more of, again, that tough guy thing, except it kind of sounds like it promotes gun violence. Like he's saying, you got a gun, I got a gun, let's shoot each other. I don't know if I like that lyrical narrative. It's just a little cheesy, and the instruments don't really do anything that other songs so far and to come don't do better. I'm also not crazy about the Pink Floyd cover. Cover songs aren't really up my alley anyways, so yeah. The track Lying Motherfucker has some memorable parts, but I gotta admit, I laugh a little bit at kind of that spoken word thing that Ice-T does at the beginning of the song, when he's just saying, everyone's got that one friend that everything they say is bullshit. I mean, he's not wrong, it's just the execution. Both Drug Lords with Max Cavalera of Sepultura and World War also has some pretty memorable parts, but again, just don't really have that same energy as the first 2 tracks did. But I do really enjoy Max Cavalera's vocal performance on Drug Lords. I think he probably is the most showcased as far as all the vocalists on here, and he sounds really good. And the closing track, Mike Contract, is definitely the most rap metal leaning song on here, but actually it's one of my favorite ones. It stands out a lot more. It, again, instrumentally, is pretty crushing. Again, I love that breakdown that kind of weaves in and out. So overall, there's a lot to like on here. This album very much surprised me. The few criticisms I have, like those gang vocal type parts, like on the title track, like I was going to mention earlier, and Fuck What You Heard, they sound really spacious, and they don't really pack a punch. I feel like they should have been done or produced to make them sound a bit more powerful and impactful. And I'm also not crazy about Ice-T's spoken word delivery when he does that. It just kind of makes me cringe a little bit. But I don't think there was a single bad song on here. Maybe a little bit of filler, but the good tracks on here are really fucking good and really elevate this album. So for that reason, I'm going to score this album a 24 out of 30. As always, thank you guys very much for watching. I would love to hear your thoughts on this album, so definitely comment those below. And props to Ice-T and props to Body Count. Definitely my biggest surprise of the year, and I can't wait to see what they do next. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace.